But, coming back to the question about what is the role of men in this, I mean, I think for me, I don't like this concept of silos, right? In the sense that, that doesn't work for me, right? Whether it's a silo by culture, race, religion, gender, it doesn't work, right? That's not how we're successful as an organization, as a society. And so I think it's relevant, and there's a natural curiosity from men in our organization because they either have daughters, they have nieces, they have wives, right? And
There are
so
women in their lives too.
exactly. And so this is relevant in terms of it being a two-way dialogue, right? And a two-way learning experience.
Welkom bij Women Disrupting Tech. Mijn naam is Dirk-Jan Hupkes en in deze podcast ga ik op ontdekkingsreis in de wereld van vrouwen in de technologiesector. Ik ga in gesprek met vrouwen die in tech werken of oprichter zijn van een tech-startup. Ik ga op zoek naar het antwoord op de vraag hoe zij er wel in geslaagd zijn om succes te hebben. Met andere woorden, hoe zij de technologiesector disrupten. Luister je mee?
Hey, welcome back to Women Disrupting Tech. Thank you for listening. In this episode, we'll travel the world of fintech to discover the value proposition for having more women in IT and digital. Our guide on this journey is Joanna Pamphilis, and Joanna is the Chief Digital and Information Officer at Unicredit, one of the largest pan-European banks. She is also one of the Fintech Top 100 Women in 2023 as awarded by Fintech magazine and a Global CIO Top 100 winner in 2023 as awarded by Hewlett Packard Enterprises. Joanna has more than 20 years of experience in the financial services sector, and this has given her a multicultural perspective on the digital transformation. Her experience allows her to champion women in tech and act as an inspiring role model for young women who aspire to develop a career in IT and digital. In this episode of Women Disrupting Tech, we'll talk about her personal journey and the value proposition for having more women in IT and digital. In addition, Joanna will reveal how she responsibly empowers and supports her teams. So please welcome to Women Disrupting Tech, Joanna Pamphilis. Good morning, Joanna. Good to have you. Question I always ask at the start of the podcast is how you got into your current job or into your current position.
Thank you and good morning. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's a great question to start with. A little bit of background in the sense that my undergraduate studies are in computer engineering, followed by a master's in business administration. And that's relevant because many years ago, it was important that I made a decision to enter this field. And I would say the criteria or the journey that I've had to reach the current role are the set of multidisciplinary experiences I've had with different steps in my career that have spanned not only technology, but business as well. So I have historically remained and spent time in the financial services industry, whether that's on the investment bank side, asset management side, fintechs, et cetera. I've also had experience in consulting, which I think is quite relevant for colleagues during their career. And then also with such credible organizations such as UBS, State Street, and now Unicredit. But what I believe has allowed me to take on this role and how I reached this role is not only this background in terms of the transcending technology and business, but really in the era that we are in the moment that we are in corporate America and across businesses and fintech. This topic of a CDIO role, which is the profile needed to bridge the gap between business and technology, where I see the trends, how it's changed over the years between a CIO, a CTO, what was needed 5-10 years ago, and the evolution to CDIO, where the profile of someone having the combination of business and technology is now recognized, because technology or digital is really what is driving businesses to disrupt their markets, to
Mhm.
innovate on new products. And really, these lines are being blurred. So my background, I think, well positions me for this role.
Yeah. So it's more because you combine two skill sets, it positions you better.
I believe, yes.
Yeah. Um, so I was wondering, if you look at the numbers of CIOs and female leadership in IT in general, I think I read something along the lines of 27% of CIOs of Fortune 500 companies is a woman. Um, how Two questions on that. One is, how is that in the fintech space? And the second, um, are there any role models that you've had to get there yourself?
No, it's a great question. I often get asked this question. And the way I would answer the question is to start out, we need a paradigm shift. We need to
Mm,
turn the tables around and look at the fact-based evidence for what is the value proposition of women in tech, women in
mhm,
fintech, which is around driving product innovation, improving revenues, creating inclusive culture,
mhm,
right? And so, to directly answer your question, the percentage of women in fintech space is similar, if not a bit worse, right? In the sense that
mhm,
women remain underrepresented in
mhm.
fintech
Yeah.
and in fintech leadership roles. So if you follow the Findexable, which is the global fintech index,
Mhm,
according to a recent report, women account for 19% of executives in fintech companies. 11% as board members, and 2% as founders. And they also receive 2-3% maximum of the total fintech venture funding. So of the total fintech
okay.
workforce, then women are representing approximately 30%. So clearly the figures are in the same range as what you quoted,
Yeah.
27% of CIOs of Fortune 500.
Yeah.
And but we need, it's a moment where we need a paradigm shift, right? I think it's past the moment. And so when you ask about role models,
Mhm,
I would say I answer this a bit from everyone. And certainly there's inspirational female role models, such
mhm,
as Melinda French Gates for me. She's very authentic. She's a passionate advocate for female leaders. Her
mhm,
philosophy is one of paying it forward, and she does this in very visible ways. And then to the other side, let's say Mary Barra, the CEO of General Motors in the US, right?
uh-huh,
So she exudes a quiet confidence, which engages others to trust and admire her. And
mhm,
she's very eager to give credit to her team rather than take the limelight herself. And
mhm,
she's taken some very bold decisions at one of the large big three automakers. But I don't meet Melinda French Gates or Mary Barra on a daily basis. So
no.
my inspiration comes from young females today that I work with, who tomorrow will be our future leaders.
Mhm,
And so day to day, I'm surrounded by females, whether they're senior leaders or young talents that inspire and I learn from.
okay. Um, just going still back a bit, because you mentioned that you take inspiration from Belinda Gates, which I can fully understand. Did you have any support in terms of mentoring, sponsoring, what have you? Maybe you were part of a talent pool in your own career.
Yes, correct. It's a good observation. But I would say, so I started from university. I was part of a talent pool many
Hmm.
years ago, and throughout my career at the various stages, transcending into managerial and senior leadership roles,
Hmm.
I have been in what I call formal programs, talent pools, as you say.
Hmm.
Um, the way I operate is that, I'm a sponge for learning, let's say, just observing from others. And
Hmm.
so for me, it's a jigsaw puzzle of pieces coming together in terms of the support, the formal, the
Hmm.
informal mentoring, and the sponsorship, as you mentioned.
Hmm.
Whether it's from young talents, more senior leaders, male, female,
Hmm.
business education. But for certain, I've had I would say, reflecting back on my career, a significant impact, 2 or 3 moments from 2 or 3 people that directionally shaped who I am and why I'm here today.
Okay, can you unpack that for a bit? Just
Certainly,
take
certainly.
one of those moments.
Certainly. I would say one of the moments is early on when I was in university, and
Mm-hmm.
I entered university looking to take a general studies, business management, marketing, but had
Mm-hmm.
not really confirmed. And I also worked during my university career, and I worked for the head of the computer engineering department, who was a
Mm.
female.
Oh,
And
okay.
she was a super strong advocate for technology. She set up the program,
Mm-hmm.
and then also was a strong advocate for women. And at that moment, had a vision about how technology would impact, change the world, really disrupt society. So a true visionary.
Mm-hmm.
um, I have to admit I resisted a bit in the beginning, where I was not convinced in the sense of typical, I would say, biases that
Mm-hmm.
society has around technology being masculine field of study.
Mm-hmm.
The roles were not female friendly, right? Again, this is some years ago. And but she wore me down, you can say, and convinced me. And so I registered for the first class,
Yeah.
and entered a classroom in a program that was all male. I was the only female in university at the time, in this program.
Mm-hmm.
So between her, because I worked with her daily, between her learning from her,
Mm-hmm.
and because personally, the course it intellectually challenged me,
Mm-hmm.
and it was very motivating, right? It was something that I had not been exposed to before. So between the two factors, between my own experience, between the challenge, between the opportunity to learn something new, and then having the role model, as I
Mm-hmm.
described, the two of those forces were quite impactful. So again, when I look back, there are 2 or 3 of these moments.
Okay. Yeah, and I can imagine that, especially if you're still at university, this makes a huge impact because it's basically also for you determined a career choice. Then I suppose.
No, it absolutely solidified the direction I was to take. And
Uh-huh.
so at that point, I declared that because at the university in the US, you had to declare at a particular state, or
Mm-hmm.
at a particular moment, I would say, during
Mm-hmm.
the university years, what your major would be. And so I did. And then I went on, I became such a strong believer that I then worked with the department chairperson to, through the campus, through recruiting,
Mm-hmm.
become a role model for others potentially to grow
Mm-hmm.
the program. So it was really a complete 180.
Yeah, and this is in the I suppose in the 1990s, early 2000s, right?
Correct, correct.
So that was still just for people who are listening who are a bit younger. Uh, it's the time when emails and internet started to come up as a technology, but especially in the 1990s, I think I got my first email address in 1990s, 1995 actually.
Right.
So that's only it was only at the start when you of the journey that we've had in the past 30 years or so.
No, absolutely correct. And then I think what made it even more interesting is the university I attended was more of a liberal arts university. So it wasn't a
Oh,
program that was it wasn't a university known for engineering or for
so
STEM, right? So it was more, as I said, more of a liberal arts. So it was a very unique opportunity for the university to rebrand itself. It was the start of this new program being set up, so it
mm,
was very anti-intuitive, let's say, right, for such a program to be set up at a liberal arts university and then to grow it, and so it was really a great experience for me.
yeah, and especially if it's also if you're going to Stanford, you can sort of expect to end up
Exactly.
in computer, even then you could expect to end up in tech. But if you're liberal arts is far away, I would say from STEM. A question that I also had: you recently shifted. I'm going to fast forward a bit.
Sure.
You recently went from US-based companies to an Italian company, and I was wondering what how that experience has been, because I don't know. I only know Unicredit from as a pan-European bank,
Right.
but I have no clue what the management culture is, how it is in terms of diversity, in terms of how it operates towards women.
It's a great question, and thank you for asking that. So it is true that Unicredit is headquartered or based in Milan, Italy.
Hmm.
As you said, though, we are a pan-European bank, and I think this is relevant in the sense that the culture is not strictly Italian. Uh,
Hmm.
it is truly pan-European. So, we operate in 13 countries, across Europe. And this
Hmm.
is relevant because it really creates a true multicultural, multi-international experience
Hmm.
and brings the best practices, the best the best out of each of the countries to kind of
Hmm.
create the culture that exists there today.
Yeah.
And so, why this is relevant is because I think we have a particularly strong and very well embedded diversity, equity, and inclusion
Hmm.
mindset. In the sense that we view this as a strategic asset for our business.
Yeah.
And so for us, diversity is not a saying, it's visibly present in our management levels and
Mm.
throughout the organization. And of course, like all organizations, we have initiatives, we have campaigns. For example, recently we concluded invisible disabilities in the workplace and what
Hmm.
this means and what are the behaviors. Wellness is a campaign that will begin after the first of the year, and
Mm.
also this year, mental health focus, and then diversity, right? So as an organization, we both formally and actively work on that. And
Mm.
again, this is not in Italy only. This is
Yeah.
truly across all the countries. So for us, it's more than just a saying, and that's an attractive element, I think, for me at Unicredit and for all the colleagues that work there, and
Mm.
also for recruiting, future talents and future leaders.
Yeah.
So it's really a way of how we do business
Yeah.
with each other internally and externally.
Yeah. I recognize that from my own background, because we really it's sort of, once you're internationally operating as a company, it makes it so much easier to start embedding best practices from other countries in your own way of work. And that by default includes also a form of diversity, maybe not necessarily male, female, but also, yeah, at least it opens, that's one of the benefits I found, that it really opens your eyes into how other people solve the same problems in a, well, maybe totally different way.
Exactly. No, it's absolutely true. And so this is for me a really unique factor that we
Hmm.
have and a differentiator for Unicredit
Yeah.
for both, as I said, internally the employees, but also externally our customers. We really we walk the talk literally.
Yeah. Well, that's very good. I think that's important too, because if you don't walk the talk, on that point, I read that you want to responsibly empower and support your talented team. Uh, can you unpack a bit what that means?
Sure. First, I have to say that the word empowerment or responsible empowerment is a bit overused, at least for my
Yeah,
taste.
yeah.
So I define it a bit clear. I mean, for me, responsibly empowering and supporting the team is
Mm.
about giving people the authority
Mm-hmm.
giving people the power to take decisions,
Mm-hmm.
trusting them, and then holding them accountable.
Yeah.
Right? So leaders, as a leader, I have the responsibility, all leaders have the responsibility to enable this concept of responsible empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
And how do I do this? I do this through making sure colleagues have the information they need to take the decision,
Mm-hmm.
the access to the resources, and the authority. Not just saying you have the authority, but making sure they have the authority.
Yeah.
So it's my responsibility as a leader to take full responsibility for this, right? And the reason this is so relevant is the result when you're truly doing this is
Mm-hmm.
it creates an inclusive culture. It creates a high performing organization. And for the teams, it creates leverage then for others in the organization to shift focus on other topics, whether that's a strategic decision, strategic initiative. So again, for me, it's a bit overused, but for me, it's about authority, taking decisions, trusting your teams, and holding them accountable.
Okay. So how does giving people authority and really backing them up in terms of the information that they need and also the support when I guess also help defend, have their back when they make decisions. How does that also help diversity?
I mean, I think it helps diversity in the sense that, again, here you're creating an inclusive culture by doing that. So you're tapping into diversity of thought,
Mm-hmm.
tapping into by empowering people, you're and backing up the empowerment with the actions.
Mm-hmm.
Then you are creating, as I said, you bring out the diversity of thought,
Mm-hmm.
but you also bring out,
Is it about that you create a safe space for people to uh, take, for lack of a better word, take matters into their own hands and really also give something their shape?
yeah,
That
no,
you're,
thank you for finding the words right
yeah.
for me. But yeah, safe space is a great word. But again, I believe that there's hidden talents in all of us.
Uh-huh.
So by creating this environment of responsible empowerment,
Mm-hmm.
when you ask how does it help diversity, for me the most immediate is diversity of thought.
Mm-hmm.
Also really untapping, unlocking,
Mm-hmm.
what is the potential, right? And so with that, it drives ideas maybe that without the responsible empowerment, are buried, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
don't tease up to the
No.
surface, or again, whether it's innovative ways to solve problems, whether it's driving product innovation,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then it becomes contagious, when you create this environment, right? And it does create that safe space that you move away from command and control,
Yeah.
right? And you create really a different environment and create leverage for others in the organization, as I said, when you can responsibly empower and support your teams.
Okay. That's clear. Thank you. Um, you recently started Pink. That's an international network within Unicredit to champion women in IT and digital innovation. Why did you start this?
No, that's a very good question. And I would almost answer it by say, why not? What I
Yeah.
what I can say is, within Unicredit, I mentioned we have a very strong culture of diversity, equity,
Mm,
and inclusion.
yeah.
And part of this is the organic ability for anyone in the organization to create an employee resource group.
Uh-huh.
And Pink, as a formal network within Unicredit, as you rightfully said, to champion women in IT and digital innovation,
Mm,
started very organically. It started actually back in COVID when colleagues were working at home and not
mm-hmm.
coming into the office.
No.
And it started in our Central, Eastern, and European perimeter, where colleagues started on a Friday afternoon, Friday evening, I would say, this concept of a pink aperitivo.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
so once restrictions on COVID were no longer,
Mm-hmm.
This pink aperitivo concept found its way to Milan because some of the colleagues in Central and Eastern Europe at Unicredit transitioned to Milan for
Mm-hmm.
work opportunities. And so then it became something in person,
Yeah.
right? But it started out as a very informal gathering. And so I've co founded Pink with my colleague at Unicredit, Luboslava Urim.
Mm-hmm.
We're both partners in this. And so she introduced the concept to me, and it really started very casually on a Friday or a Thursday evening. We would both gather some female talents and have a
Mm-hmm.
pink aperitivo and talk about and we created this concept of building bonds and fostering success for each other, right?
Yeah.
And I would say the demand outstripped the supply to the point that last summer over the holiday period, Luba and I were discussing that there's a strong demand, there's a hunger, there's an appetite for
Yeah.
this, right? And to formalize it and to make it something, greater than something informal in Milan. And
Yeah.
so we created this pan-European pink network across Unicredit just in the last months. And so now we have launched what we call our Women to Women Learning Series. And on a monthly basis, we have guest speakers, both internal and external to Unicredit, to learn from, to
Mm-hmm.
listen to their experiences. We have also the opportunity for colleagues that join to ask questions. So it's a very interactive women to women learning session.
Mm-hmm.
And we have over 300 colleagues joining each month. And so now next year, we look to expand the network in ways with touching the countries even more and having more involvement from Bulgaria, from Croatia, from Serbia with different chapters. So it's
Yeah.
really interesting how it started, and I'm proud to be a co-founder with my
Yeah.
partner Luboslava Urim. But this is the impact that we make, with Pink.
Yeah, and I think it's a great initiative, especially it's also something really positive that came out of COVID then.
Exactly. No, it's a great story. Thank you for
Yeah,
asking.
yeah, I really, and also the fact that you, it's a women for women network. A question that always makes me a bit curious: what is the role of men in this whole discussion? Because I mean, there's clearly a demand for more female empowerment, I would say. But how can men contribute to that?
So interestingly enough, we actually have 10% of our population at the Women to Women events that are men that are joining.
Mm-hmm.
So I think again, we wanted to launch this network in a very simple, low friction way. So we
Mm-hmm.
launched it the last 3 months with the Women to Women learning series,
Mm-hmm.
and as I said, we have men joining, uh, and they need to be at the table. They're part of the conversation clearly as
Mm-hmm.
well. And then we will look at how we can continue to integrate the concept of diversity as we look at different topics and conferences and initiatives for next year. But coming back to the question about what is the role of men in this, I mean, I
Yeah.
think it's, for me, I don't like this concept of silos, right? In
Mm-hmm.
the sense that that doesn't work for me,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's a silo by culture, race, religion, gender, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't work, right? That's not how we're successful as an organization, as a
Yeah.
society. And so I think it's relevant, and there's a natural curiosity from men in our organization because they either have daughters, they have nieces, they have wives,
Yeah.
right? And
There are
so
women in their lives too.
exactly, exactly. And so this is relevant in terms of it being a two-way dialogue, right? And
Mm-hmm.
a two-way learning experience.
Yeah. So, out of curiosity, what was the response of your fellow board members? Because you're a board member of Unicredit Services GmbH. You're also, well, I guess, on a board level overall for Unicredit. What was the response of your fellow board members on this?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer the question if I may. Just one correction. I am on the board of the Unicredit Services GmbH. I am not on the board of Unicredit at the group level, only simply to make a small correction.
Okay.
But coming back to the question, again, the response has been overwhelmingly positive from all parts of the organization, from our colleagues in people and culture, from colleagues that lead our cultural change, from colleagues that lead the diversity, equity, inclusion. It is a topic at board level discussion. So I think, as I said, the response, our sensation, meaning my co-founder and partner and I, Luboslava Uram, our sensation was that there's a demand for this that we need to tap into.
Yeah.
So because it's embedded in how we work, it's a strategic asset for our business. The feedback and the support has been tremendous.
Oh, that's really helpful. Also, it's also a good signal to women in the organization. Then that also these initiatives are supported,
No,
but
absolutely.
more broadly than it's just a group of women who doing work for a group of women. Because
Correct.
I agree that working in silos usually does not really help in this type of cultural changes that we need to make.
Absolutely correct.
So moving towards the end of the interview, I have an arrangement with Jacqueline van der Ende. She's
Okay.
a former guest of mine. That we need to make this podcast irrelevant 10 years from now. And irrelevant in this case means that diversity, equity, and inclusion in tech doesn't need attention anymore because it's normal. Well, you said that within Unicredit, it's sort of a way of working. So I was wondering if you have any advice on how to make this podcast irrelevant then.
I think it's a fantastic stretch goal.
Yeah, not sure if I can make it, but
No,
I need to have the goal in mind.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm thinking it in a thoughtful way, right? And one side of me says is my belief is that we'll always have to speak about it, but that's not a bad thing,
No.
right? Because diversity, equity, and inclusion is such a wide topic with dimensions that are spanning gender, culture, disabilities, biases. And so I do not have a crystal ball in terms of predicting how long or until which year we can reach real diversity. But what I would say is that we need to take the incremental steps, right? This is not an overnight big bang.
No.
And what you're doing with this podcast, quite honestly, is one of those steps, right?
Yeah.
In terms of creating the platform for visibility, awareness of the topic, because it's through the collective, the individual collective changes of everyone is how we make the progress and make a difference. For me, it's continuous change, right?
Yeah.
To make that progress, and then bridging the gap through both kind of societal agendas, institutional agendas. But at the end of the day, each of us have to take a level of responsibility to get to the end.
Yeah, do what we can do ourselves.
Exactly.
Take control of the parts that we can influence, and maybe not. I wouldn't say care, but maybe not worry too much about the stuff we cannot influence.
Correct. I mean, I think, again, I think it's a tremendous stretch goal, but there is a side of me that believes that we'll always have to speak about it, and we should speak about it. I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, I agree. I think it should be a topic that is on the agenda always, if only to keep people, keep our guards up that we don't slip back.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. No, fully agree.
So, thank you very much for this conversation. Really enjoyed it, Joanna.
Absolutely. Likewise. Pleasure.
If people want to learn more about you, about Unicredit, about your personal journey, if they want to connect with you, where would you like to send them?
I think the easiest way is for colleagues to follow me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Also in 2024, I'll be definitely speaking on different stages. The first one being in Q1 in Frankfurt at the World Class Digital Transformation and Innovation Summit.
Mm-hmm.
But LinkedIn is definitely the right place to go to stay on top of my journey.
Okay. Well, we'll include a link to your LinkedIn profile then, and also if I can find a link to the conference, I'll include those in the show notes.
Thank you.
Well, once again, thank you very much for this interview. Really appreciate your open feedback, and listeners, thank you very much for listening. Well, that's it for this episode. Thank you for listening. Joanna and I hope that you enjoyed our conversation as much as we did and that we've managed to inspire you. You can learn more about Joanna and connect with her via the links in the show notes. And as usual, you can find the show notes at womendisruptingtech.blog. There you can also find other episodes of the podcast as well as blog posts about topics related to diversity, equity, and inclusion in tech. On the same website, you can also join the Women Disrupting Tech community. Being a member of the community has the benefit that you can learn about blogs and upcoming events, and that you're the first to learn when new episodes go on air. To become a member, simply enter your best email address at the bottom of the show notes. Are you listening to the podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google, or Goodpods? Then I'd appreciate it if you would consider giving the show a rating or a review. That way, you help other people find the podcast. And if you want to contribute to more diversity in tech, you can also consider sharing the podcast with friends, family, and coworkers, because that way you give my guests the platform they need to make this podcast obsolete in 10 years from now. Finally, if you want to connect with me, you can do that via the website, of course, but you can also do that on LinkedIn. Just look up my name and you'll find me, and then follow or connect with me there. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you in the next episode.